Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 25th edition of the Fantasia International Film Festival, being held once again this year, mostly online, as well as with some special screenings at the Imperial Theatre in Montreal due to COVID-19 restrictions. We're very happy to have today the team of AGNES, the latest film from Mickey Reece, playing as part of the Camera Lucida section. Very happy to have with us the film's director, Mickey Reece, as well as his co-writer, John Selvidge. Hi, guys. Welcome to the chat.
Happy to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you back at the festival following Climate of the Hunter with AGNES, which is a film that I think, in a way, as at least as far as I conceive it, kind of sees you once again sort of tackle a sort of emblematic genre or an emblematic sort of figure of horror or genre cinema. You know, you did the vampire, and now you're sort of tackling this idea of a nun movie or a demonic possession movie, but with a sort of Mickey Reece twist. And so maybe I want to get to the thing that surprised me the most, and somehow I shouldn't have been surprised because I've seen some of your films, and but the film structure struck me as completely fascinating, and so I wanted to ask you, what came first, the demonic possession movie, or the sort of reformed nun drama?
Well, it was definitely the possession movie, but I think when John and I are writing, it's like we're trying to do something different with the horror genre, because I mean, to be honest, ultimately we're trying to make kind of like art house comedies to a degree, you know what I mean? But but even that doesn't really define what we're setting out to do every time. So by incorporating the horror elements in there, it's the same situation where when we go to write, it's like, well, okay, well, we have this and we have our kind of style that's ingrained in the film, but then it's like, what can we do to actually do something different, to actually make something different. And yeah, just splitting it up halfway through, it's like, well, I haven't seen that in a movie in a long time, so let's see what we can do with that.
Yeah, and so as you were writing it, was it something that came about because I've heard writers and actually, or illustrators or things like that say that one way to keep things interesting is to as soon as you're bored, shift gears, right? Like sort of lean into that sort of dissatisfaction or with a narrative, with an idea, and then sort of listen to that instinct instead of battling it. Was that part of the process? Did you, in a way, was not want to do the demonic possession?
So your question is, did we get bored writing the possession movie and decide?
Basically.
I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
John, what did you get bored?
There was a sense, we knew at some point that we would shift emphasis towards the character. We did get bored. There was a sense of kind of piling on trope upon trope from exorcism films, and in a story we liked and in a way we liked that was kind of guardedly dramatic comedy. But yeah, no, I remember the moment when you just kind of looked at me and said, like, I don't want to, let's do something else. Let's get out of the convent. And then that was such a bold move at the time. I remember being kind of floored by it. But then once we took the character outside the walls, she started to do something different, and loved the script that it became after that.
Yeah. So much as the film seems to me to be about, obviously, the sort of crisis of faith and a certain skepticism about religion, organized religion. What's your interest in religion? What's your background there? Did you grow up with it? And what did you want to explore in this movie?
For me, it was just imagery, and we did it a little bit in Strike Your Mistress, and I kind of marry the three films to a degree, where they're all kind of this loose, trilogy. I mean, not trilogy, but just similar themes, and I think, tackled some religious stuff in Strike, and then kind of like then got more horror with Climate, and then this was kind of like marrying the two. But John actually has more background in religion than I do.
Yeah, I'm the one with the Catholic background, went to Catholic school and all that, and was fairly religious growing up. And yeah, I'd say a lot of the thematic things you could point to in this movie were things I wanted to explore. I don't think we necessarily set out to explore them, Mickey, when we were writing, but I think kind of went off and did my thing with it and found their way into the dialogue between characters, particularly the young priest and the older priest, and the mother superior and things like that. And of course, Mary's, struggle of faith later. But that seemed like it happened pretty organically in our writing process together, Mickey.
Absolutely. And yeah, like my interest in the nuns was essentially to kind of like, shoot these kind of like, Renaissance blocking and like these just kind of stark imagery that you can, that religion lends itself to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was asking because the dialogue is so convincing and in a way, rings true to me, and I particularly love that that analogy at the end with the sandwich, which is such a great way to end the movie. Mickey, this is what, your 20th feature film, something like that. Your 20. How do you keep it fresh?
Well, I'm keeping it fresh now because I'm able to work with bigger budgets. So it's almost like it was more of a question of keeping it fresh before, when it was always kind of the same budget. It was always kind of the same allowance, like $5,000, $10,000 here to make a movie. And that was harder to, work in those confines. Now that there's, there's more of an interest and I'm able to get bigger budgets, the sky's the limit. So, I think it'll just get fresher from here until, I get spoiled with, whatever, $1 million budgets and, whatever comes.
Yeah, knock on wood. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever comes out of my filmmaking career, like I imagine, it'll hit another point like that where it's just like I either got to move up or stay stale.
Mm-hmm. This is your first film you make with a with Screen Actors Guild actors, correct? Or
Yes.
At that level, yeah. I mean, I think I'm thinking of Chris Sullivan too, Sean Gunn, and not in a in a green suit. Did that caliber or did that change anything to your way of working? I mean, not just the actors, I'm talking also this sort of these bigger budgets and a bit more of maybe an industry movie for you this time around.
Well, I think on set working like with the actors while we're shooting, it's still a very small budget movie. So really your directing comes from kind of talking to them beforehand, and then whenever you're actually on set with them, you just say it faster, move your head over here. You know what I mean? It's like hard. You can't really like direct whenever you're under the gun like that usually, as far as just the performances go. So it's kind of like, leaving it up to them, just hoping that they understand the tone and material that you're setting for them. But it was more of a pre-production thing, because when Quagmire signed on, they're the ones who got all those actors to sign on, and they would give me kind of like a list of people to choose from, and I've never had that, you know what I mean? So I never even done auditions really. It was always just kind of like you knew who you knew. You got your friends in there and other actors that you'd seen around town do stuff, and knew that you were all kind of working at the same level. So there was going to be an equal kind of respect or trust there. This was kind of working with strangers. Hey, how's it going? All right, you ready? Action. To a degree, and but like I said, like on set, it's just the same thing as working with anyone. Like you're still crunched for time.
There's I think maybe I want to go back to the writing, and maybe you've answered this to some degree with this film in terms of the process of writing it and this idea of growing bored of an idea, going to the next. But when and I'm thinking also of your films, Arrows or something like Climate, which all seem to me to deal with a sort of an idea of misdirection or an idea of a sort of a faulty perception of something, right? There's always this element of deconstruction, whether it's a genre, but also within the films themselves, an expectation or a sort of a character's trajectory. Why are you so fascinated with sort of breaking things down at that level? And does that idea of deconstruction pop into your head at first, or do you sit down and think to yourself, I'm going to write a vampire movie, but then in the process, things change, or things happen?
You want to go, John?
Yeah, I can talk about it from my side at least. I know it always emerges from the subject matter. Like in this case, nuns were before anything. It's not like, I don't think anybody set out to write a script about let's treat what a collective hallucination feels like and what it feels like to wake up from it. I know there's an aspect of that for me that's political, especially right now. But I think you're right. I think there is a deconstructive thread that even if that we like to pull, even when we're not aware of it. This is what I think anyway, to where something like a genre, something like a line of inquiry would kind of turn on itself suddenly and either expose its limitations or kind of challenge itself to take a sudden new direction or to turn itself inside out, whether for the purposes of some grand philosophical statement, doubtful, maybe just comedy sometimes. But I think that wanting to undermine something about the structure we've set up in a way that plays with audience expectations and kind of delights them too, hopefully. I think that's there for us, just maybe instinctively. I can't say we look at each other and say, let's do that when we write a script. But I know Mickey's got solid tendencies that way that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I think from my perspective on it, it's like you're almost setting the audience up the way when you're like setting the audience up to deconstruct the film, you're always making a film that someone else that has already made, something that everyone's seen to one degree or another. And I think like Arrows, like you were saying, Arrows like a very good example. Like we've seen that movie before. We know what that movie is. We've seen that movie 100 times. We've seen these characters. We know this dynamic. We know what's happening with the movie. Even if it gets crazy, even if it's kind of like a gets wild R-rated comedy, like we've still seen it all. What we haven't seen is like an eruption of the movie of I guess it doesn't matter if I give it away, who's going to watch it, but I mean, the dinner at the end, where they're eating Greg, like, and that all of a sudden just like complete turn like that makes me sleep at night because I'm able to say, well, we did something different.
I want to talk about Ben Hall's character and then the transition to Mary, as to me kind of this because this sort of coin, two sides of the same coin, because the film does end up having this interesting transition from almost as if the disillusionment of one infects the other, so to speak. But then as far as genre is concerned, then what I think is really interesting and what the switch sort of sets up, and I think you do it really beautifully, even on a filmmaking level, when you all of a sudden, the style of the film changes so slightly, and it becomes almost this sort of I don't want to say naturalistic, but there's this almost documentary element of this sort of beaten down existence, and these sort of shots of that feel very sort of taken on the fly, anyway, sorry, I'm rambling on my own question here, but I want to talk about basically this idea of disillusionment and this idea of the skepticism in the film, and how important that was to you, or maybe how you conceived of that.
All you, John.
Hey, disillusionment. Could you repeat that? No, just kidding.
Sorry.
Not at all. I mean, one thing that struck me, I mean, and it's not entirely evident from the script. I mean, if the first half of the film is literally cloistered and all these dark interiors, it's funny for me that the moment when we go outside and we get all the light, that it's kind of an oppressive light, that it's too much space, almost like it's, you know, we felt cramped in the convent before probably, but once we get out and experience freedom, it's like it's too much freedom. So I think that the disillusionment there you mentioned plays into that quite a bit. And I do love that it's communicated visually, that very wintry landscape outside.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, do you want to take that anywhere, Mickey? Because it's such a stark, you know, visual contrast between the two.
The idea, you know, from where I was standing is, you know, it's still, a lot of people have said that they have a problem with the change in tone, but there's not a change in tone really. It's still just, in fact, the second part is even kind of more dreamy to that degree as the first one. It's still otherworldly. Like it's still both like both parts of the movie, if we're going to call them that, are like exist in different worlds, but not a world that not reality, not a world that we know. And so, and I think even like the characters in the second half of the movie are just as wild and you know, kind of like silly as they are in the first half. You know what I mean? It's just that it's really just getting out of that convent that kind of throws everything, just kind of throws a wrench in everything. And I think to a degree that has to do with us not being used to watching movies like that.
Mm-hmm. I also maybe want to lean into what you said, right? This kind of political dimension to that loss of faith, to that transition, to the bubble being burst in a way. Rewatching the film, it kind of struck me that there's something, not only does the second half sort of give us incredible insight into what it might be like to reintegrate society, but not only in a way, like not only as a nun, right, as I don't know, a convict or maybe a recovering drug addict or something like that. There's something so poignant about that feeling of displacement. And maybe you can talk about that aspect too, and how you, as you said, conceive it a bit as of having a political dimension.
Since I mentioned politics before, I guess I'd better get in there a little bit. That sort of thing, for me, I think, at least, is always a happy accident when it arises. There's never a moment, I don't think there's ever been a moment where Mickey and I have said, let's put a political angle on this. It has to emerge organically from the material. I like particularly what you said about what it's like for a recovering addict to reintegrate into society or something like that. This stage, it's best to leave that sort of thing oblique, because I certainly wouldn't want to shut down other kinds of readings on the film that folks might have. But that kind of, well, right now we know that something like waking up from a dream, a hallucination, an addiction, reminds me in some ways, and how in Climber the Hunter, the vampire Wesley, or not, you know, is like a compulsive seducer and things like that. Things like that right now, I would never want to stress it too much. That should be what it is, and suggest, hopefully in a powerful way, the direction we're going with that, without saying anything definitive about it. We can have a creepy sense that that someone is putting something over on someone else, or whether it's an institution or whatever it is that's doing that, a culture, you know, a myth. But that I think is more structural to maybe even just society now in general than any particular political. Because I want to lean into it being structural rather than aimed at anything in particular. But of course, you know, there's commentary now that you can wrest out of that.
Mhm.
What do you think of that, Mickey?
So I think like for me, like, you know, a big inspiration, you know, filmically was like Dead Presidents, the Hughes brothers. You know, once he gets back from Vietnam and he enters into this world, it's just all shit from there. You know what I mean? It's just all this kind of disaster, and it's just, you know, it's worse than Vietnam was. So this is kind of, you know, very, very similar in that. And you know, John and I, we talk. There's an easy route to all of this. There are two different movies here that we could have done and unified in a way that, you know, makes sense to everyone and everybody sees the same movie. You know, same way with Climber the Hunter. There was an answer we could have had there. We talk about all that stuff, and then we go back in and change it to make it more ambiguous for these reasons. Because I mean, I don't know, there's nothing more upsetting than whenever you have like an interpretation of a film and you watch a Q&A or a commentary on the director and he has something completely different in mind. One of those for sure is Darren Aronofsky's Mother. I remember going to the theater and really loving that movie. Just like, oh, this is awesome because this is a big budget, like surrealist, you know, this kind of like big budget, like modern Buñuel film.
Right.
So fun, so good. And then he goes on all these interviews and he's talking about it and he's like putting meaning to everything that he did. And it's just like, well, that sucks.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's
Yeah.
not what I wanted at all.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I had the same thing with that movie where, yeah, I mean, I didn't like it from the get-go, but then it became even dumber
Yeah.
as he was explaining it.
Yeah.
Yeah, never definitive, but multivalent. Things that are
Absolutely, yeah.
breathed in different directions, right?
You know,
No,
I think about that with a lot of movies. Like, I don't know, film language is like a big like selling point on me for a movie. Because I remember, you know, Inglourious Bastards coming out and people, you know, talking to people about that. Like, oh, it was kind of boring. And I was like, it wasn't that boring because my dad and I went to the theater and watched a spaghetti western, a French New Wave film, you know, like all in one. And my dad and I got to enjoy that, you know what I mean? Because it was a blockbuster. So that's my kind of my thing with Mother. Oh yeah, let's just talk about Mother the whole time. But I only saw it the once in theaters, but regardless, like I said, it was like it was awesome because you know, we got to sit in a theater and see like big stars, Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem, and a big time auteur director, Darren Aronofsky, doing this this surrealist movie that we don't get. We don't get to see that. We don't get movies like that. So it's always a treat when we do. And so it's hard to find flaws in it to me.
Darren, call us.
All right.
That's wonderful. Yeah, well, thank you so much, guys. Maybe do you both want to leave us perhaps with a word to the audience watching the film at home?
Yeah, you know, just no, actually, no. I don't want to. I want you to enjoy it, but I want you to enjoy it on your own terms. I don't want to influence you with my words any more than the film can do itself. You know what I mean?
That's perfect.
I like to make the movie speak for itself. If that does anything for you,
John?
His or her own terms, always. That's what I think anyway.
Thank you so much, guys.
appreciate it.
Take care.
Thanks for